Hello beautiful, welcome back to my channel. My name is Bettina and I'm the makeup enthusiast. In today's video, I'm sharing with you my Q1 update on my Pan That palette and my intro for Q2. So if you want to see how I went on my Pan That palette for Q1, then stay tuned. But before we get into the video, if you are new around here and you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed down below so you can get notified when all my project panning videos go live. And without further ado, let's jump on in to the update. Okay, so Pan That palette hasn't been that successful. So if you were here for my intro or my Pan That palette last year I started with my theme. So I introduced a theme and a way that I like to structure my Pan That palette, and that was quarterly projects, and each quarter I would focus on something old and something new. So basically I would grab out a newer face palette out of my collection and an older face palette out of my collection, and I would focus on the two for the entire quarter. This project, Pan That palette, for me is purely face palette based because I do pan those eyeshadows, and this year I also do project level up. So I have two other projects that are eyeshadow based, so as to avoid any further double ups, I keep this project as purely face palette based. So this year in 2023, I'm continuing on with my theme of something old and something new. However, for Q1, I started with two something olds. And that was my Anastasia Beverly Hills Contour Kit and my Anastasia Beverly Hills Aurora Glow Kit. So these were the two palettes that I focused on for Q1. Let's get into it. So we'll start with the Aurora Lights Glow Kit, or the Aurora Glow Kit. It's not looking great. It hasn't really changed at all, other than the fact that there's basically like a crack in every pan now. I did accidentally drop this, which meant that basically every pan has a crack in it now, which just annoys me to no end, but it is what it is. So I have been using these on and off, but not consistently. I don't know whether you can see in the purple pan here, there is a little bit of a dip down the bottom here on this one. And then the other ones that I've been using, I've basically been dipping in them very inconsistently. This palette has been somewhat of a fail over the last month. I was just thinking today, and probably over the last couple of days, that later on in the year, I'm thinking that I might want to franken a few things. I don't think I'm quite ready to do it just yet. I'm thinking mainly I might want to franken one of my matte blushes into a glowy blush. So I'm thinking that maybe for Q3 and 4, maybe I might grab out a highlighter or a highlighter palette that I have, something like this maybe, and have a play around with some blushes that I have and maybe look at frankening something. So I have like some highlighters in here that are like shimmery pinky colors. So I thought that maybe I might be able to grab something like that to franken with something at some point in the future. I'm not at the point where I'm needing or wanting to play with a new blush. So just for now, I'm just going to chuck this back in my collection. But I think maybe at some point in the future, I might bring it back to do some frankening with. I probably won't include it in a project, the actual palette itself, but I'm just thinking that that's something that I might do with that palette, with like some of the shades. Then moving on to my Anastasia Beverly Hills Contour Kit. And again, this one hasn't been that successful either. However, I do have quite a substantial pan on this lid setting shade here. So as you can see, it's quite a large pan in the center there. Probably maybe another 4 to 5 months and I'll have that one completely finished. I have kind of very sparingly dabbled in the bronzers. I haven't really grabbed for them all that much because, again, I did include a bronzer in my team project pan, which probably wasn't the smartest idea, But I included a bronzer in my team project pan, being my Too Faced Milk Chocolate Soleil bronzer, because I was so focused on trying to hit pan on that one, and I still am really focused on trying to hit pan on that one. I didn't really grab for the bronzers in this palette. Last year, this project was a shit ton more successful for me because I wasn't including bronzers, blushes, and highlights in my team project pan. Whereas this year, at the start of the year, I identified, I think two blushes, a bronzer, and a highlighter that I actually wanted to use up and get out of my collection. So it's been a little bit difficult for me this year because I have crossovers between those categories and these palettes. So it's just making it a little bit difficult to make progress on these palettes when I have those other products from those categories that I'm focusing on. Plus, I also have a cream blush, bronzer, and highlight as well. So there's lots of double ups going on this year, unfortunately, and I'm just having trouble finding a nice balance for everything. That being said, I'm not giving up on this project. I am going to continue on. For quarter two, I'm focusing on 2 new palettes, and I'm hoping that by focusing on 2 new palettes, I might spur some inspiration. I might get a little bit excited by what I'm working on. And you've seen these palettes before in this project last year, but I enjoyed them so much last year when I worked on these in projects that I'm going to bring them back again. I think if I bring these in, it might just rekindle my love for this project again. So we're bringing in my Hourglass Ambient Lighting Edit Sculpt palette. This is my newest or most recent Hourglass palette. I know it's like 3 years old now, but this is my most recent Hourglass palette that I have in my collection. It's the newest one that I have in my collection. So I'm considering this still, for me, myself, a new face palette in my collection. As you can see, I do already have pans in this palette, but I do have some goals for this palette, I think. So for me, I want to try and use up both of these 2 here. So when I do use this palette, I mix these 2 together. So the bottom one here is the bronzer, Natural Bronze Light, and the top one here is Dim Light. So I normally mix these together and use them as a bronzer. I would also like to use up Mood Exposure, but I don't think that's gonna happen. There's still quite a lot of product left in there. So I don't think it's going to be possible to have Mood Exposure finished, but maybe I can try and at least have half of it done, or maybe like 3/4 of it finished. So that one is that there. In terms of the other 2, or the other 3, so these 2 at the top here, these are highlighters, or it's a highlighter. No, it's a finishing powder. So it's diffused light and it's a strobe powder. So that's these 2 here. This one here, I'm thinking that maybe with my skin tone, I might be able to get away with it as maybe like a bronzer topper, because it is quite like, when I swatch it on my hand, like it's almost like a kind of orangey brownie kind of shade. So I'm thinking maybe I might be able to just use it as a bronzer topper. And then the one in the middle, I don't know, I don't think I would like to use it as a powder. Maybe when I'm filming, I might like to use it as a powder. But this one I think I've panned one of these before, and I think I just used it as a highlighter for like everyday work, makeup, stuff like that, when I didn't want a highlighter to be super intense. And then that leaves me with the blush in the middle, which is Vibrant Flush. I haven't used this one all that much at all. It is probably the highest or the least touched out of the entire palette. So I definitely would just like to start playing with that one and figuring out ways that I like to use it, eye looks that I like to pair it with, and such like that. So that's my plan for this palette. If I could have at least 2 empty pans in here by the next update, I will be very happy, or by the next like rotation, I'll be very happy. and the rest I just want to work on, play with, and try and just figure out ways that I like to use them. Once I figure out ways that I like to use those other products in these palettes that I don't normally like organically reach for, normally it's kind of like a snowball effect for me. I find in the past when I've finally figured out ways that I like to use products, like for example, the way that I discovered that I like to use dim light as a bronzer. I have the little trio pan of the three, like the first trio pan that Hourglass came out with. It had dim light in it. And one day I was just like, let me see if I can use this as a bronzer. And I bloody loved it. And then I flew through that powder. So that's the Hourglass palette. And I'm also going to bring in my beloved Charlotte Tilbury palette. This is the Nudegasm palette. I love this palette. I think it's a beautiful palette. It's just a little quad. Now I have quite a lot of use in the blush in here. So that's this one here, which is the Multi Glow. I love the highlighter in here, but for me with my skin tone, I find a little bit goes a long way, but it is beautiful on the skin. It looks very like seamless on the skin and it just blends in really nicely. I haven't really reached much for these bronzers up here though, so I would like to get some more use out of these two bronzers and just have a play with them and figure out how I like to use them. Ideally, in this palette, I think that I'm getting very close to hitting pan on the blush. So if I could at least have pan on the blush by our next update, I would be one happy cookie. And then maybe just have some more wear on the pans. If I could start to see some of the writing on the pans wear away, again, I'd be happy with that. My two oldies are rolling out and my two newbies are coming in. Let me know down in the comments how you are going on your face palettes, if you are focusing on any of them. If you have any ways or ideas of ways to use those few pans in these palettes that I discussed I am having trouble with organically reaching for, let me know down in the comments. If you did enjoy this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe if you're new around here and you love watching project panning videos. That's it for this video, beautiful. I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day. I hope you are staying safe, healthy, and looking after yourself. And I will see you in the next video. Goodbye, beautiful.